Part 1. The Coup and the Hidden Agenda. The coup in Burkina Faso began not with an explosion or a clamor of gunfire, but with a meticulously planned military strike, one that unfolded in the shadows. In contrast to the chaotic, power-hungry uprisings of the past, this was a silent, surgical operation, a well-calculated attack that avoided the usual theatricality of coups. It wasn't designed to seize control for personal gain or to place a leader at the helm. Instead, the coup plotters' true goal was far more insidious: to destabilize the country so thoroughly that it would invite the intervention of foreign powers, ultimately erasing the sovereignty of Burkina Faso. The plan wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, it was precise, quiet, and deadly. The ultimate aim was not to remove the current president or military leadership. The mission was far more complex. It was about rendering the country ungovernable, creating chaos so profound that it would provoke a response from the international community. Rather than assuming power, the conspirators aimed to plunge Burkina Faso into such deep instability that the world would be compelled to send in foreign peacekeepers or military forces to restore order. They knew that by pushing the country to the brink of collapse, they would force the hand of global powers, all too eager to step in and impose their control. Behind the operation was a cold, calculated approach. These men did not seek the reins of leadership for themselves. Their ultimate ambition was to dismantle the local authority completely. In the chaos that would follow, they hoped to create a vacuum, one that would inevitably be filled by international forces. It wasn't just about overthrowing a regime, it was about breaking the nation's will to govern itself, laying the groundwork for international intervention, and leaving Burkina Faso in the hands of foreign powers. The coup plotters, shrouded in secrecy, were not acting out of the desperation of a failed insurgency or the fury of an angry mob. They were part of a quiet, calculated conspiracy led by individuals deeply embedded in the military and political fabric of the country. These were seasoned officers, once at the heart of the system, who knew precisely how to manipulate it. The true aim was not just to take down one leader, but to erase Burkina Faso's national sovereignty, replacing it with a new order where foreign intervention would be the only answer. They weren't overthrowing a leader, they were engineering the collapse of the nation itself, and with it, an invitation to the international community to come in and take control. In this delicate game of power, the plotters were not seeking glory, they were seeking chaos. Part 2. The involvement of former officials and international relations. The architects of the coup were not ragtag rebels or faceless insurgents hiding in the wilderness. No, these were former military officials, veterans of Burkina Faso's political and military machinery, who once wielded significant power and influence at the highest levels of government. Though many had been sidelined during the recent wave of military reforms, they had never truly been disempowered. Instead, they quietly retained their networks, their insider knowledge, and their deep understanding of the state's inner workings. These men knew how the system worked, where the weaknesses were, and how to exploit them without attracting suspicion. It made them the most dangerous kind of enemy, one that moves in the shadows, knowing exactly where to strike. These former officers, many with years of service behind them, had far from disappeared. They had been quietly building a network, a clandestine web of influence that operated under the radar, well outside the reach of those in power. It wasn't a network of online chatter or encrypted emails. No, this was the kind of operation that thrived on face-to-face meetings, whispered conversations, and untraceable messages. No emails, no digital footprints, just an old-school, analog conspiracy where documents were read, memorized, and then burned. Each communication was passed hand to hand, each plan sealed by the silence of those involved. It was a conspiracy crafted in the shadows, a far cry from the loud, chaotic coups of the past. These men worked in secrecy, with a meticulous precision that made them almost impossible to detect. The fact that the coup nearly succeeded is a testament to how deeply embedded these individuals were within the system. They weren't just plotting from a faraway hideout or an isolated base. They knew the system intimately. They knew the palace's layout, understood military protocols, and knew precisely who could be trusted. They had access, and they used it. They didn't need to break in through the gates of the presidential palace. They could simply walk through them. They knew where the weak points were, who could be manipulated, and who would turn a blind eye. This wasn't a group of outsiders trying to infiltrate a system. They didn't understand it was an operation run by insiders. Soldiers who had once marched in step with the very government they were now planning to overthrow. And yet, despite the depth of their knowledge and the secrecy of their operations, the plot failed. But the failure wasn't due to a lack of execution. It was the result of quick and decisive action from the government. Once the intelligence services got wind of what was happening, they acted swiftly to thwart the coup. They moved in silence, making sure their response was just as quiet and discreet as the conspiracy itself. Documents were seized, phone lines were tapped, and suspects were arrested mid-conversation, unaware that the very operation they were orchestrating had already been exposed. It was a close call. The government had to act quickly, but its actions were deliberate, ensuring that the coup would never come to fruition. This, however, raises an even deeper question. How many more conspirators are there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their next chance? The coup may have been stopped, but the network that built it is still out there working quietly, building its influence, and preparing for the next opportunity. The failure of the coup was not coincidental. An anonymous tip-off from outside Burkina Faso helped the intelligence services detect the plot. From there, intelligence officials acted quickly to trace suspicious activities, including banking transactions, encrypted communications, and unusual behavior from military personnel. The signs were subtle, but telling: unexpected leave taken by military officers, a surge in encrypted communication, and spikes in ATM withdrawals linked to former regime loyalists. Once the government received a tip-off with less than a week to go, they acted swiftly, though discreetly. There were no sirens, no public warnings, and no mobilization of troops. The response was as quiet as the conspiracy itself, with military dorms being searched, phones seized, and communications wiped. Some officers were arrested mid-conversation, unaware that the operation had already been thwarted. While the coup was thwarted, the masterminds behind it are still out there, waiting for another opportunity. This presents a serious challenge to Burkina Faso's government, as the possibility of future attempts to destabilize the country remains high. The country faces not only external threats, but also internal risks, with former officials and military figures still holding significant sway. The government must continue to monitor and investigate potential threats, while balancing international relations and domestic security. The geopolitical tension in the region, especially regarding Burkina Faso's growing independence from Western powers, complicates matters further. The failed coup in Burkina Faso serves as a reminder of the internal and external threats the government faces in maintaining stability. The plot wasn't just about removing one person from power. It was about orchestrating a larger geopolitical shift in the region. The response from Burkina Faso shows the delicate balance it must maintain to prevent both internal and external forces from destabilizing the country. Though the coup was foiled, the masterminds behind it are still at large, and the government must remain vigilant. Burkina Faso's future depends not only on securing its borders, but also on navigating the complex web of international relations and political alliances. The international community must pay attention to what happens next, as this situation is far from over.